Кто первый выступает?
Добрый день.
В общем, порегулируйте это. Туда или туда? Ой, а куда делись у меня презентация, которая здесь вот Леша? Нет, их сюда выключила. Вот первое. Ну что, вы расселись? Okay. Good day, dear participant. Xin chào.
Good morning.
Unfortunately, I can't hear you properly, dear Vietnamese friend.
Yeah, I could hear you very clear.
Now it is better.
So could you hear me right now?
Yes, let us start our regular seminar. And okay, I would like to ensure that all of you can hear me properly. Is it so?
Yes.
So let us start.
Yes.
And first of all, I congratulate you on continuation of our regular seminar, and with its new status. It is international project in financial university now. And first of all, I gave the word to open our discussion our Vietnamese scientific partners with presentation financial synergy in mergers and acquisition, evidence from Vietnam. Reports is given by Dr. Tran Thi Huan Anh, Banking Academy of Vietnam, and Chan Thi Xuan Anh, Banking Academy of Vietnam. Please take your turn. Start right now.
Okay. So we start right now, right? Okay. So good morning, everyone.
Dear colleagues, upload please your presentation.
Okay, so
upload your presentation first.
Yes.
We have some technical difficulty with translation.
Chị nói nhá. Hay là có sai?
Have you already uploaded? Okay. We are ready to listen to you.
Okay, so let's start. Our topic today about financial synergies in merger and acquisitions evidence from Vietnam. And I and my colleagues, Lương Minh Hà, will be present today. Chị chả nhìn thấy cái gì thế này, không chỉ mình slide không. Okay. Okay, so our content will contain 4 main parts. Firstly, I will tell you why we choose this topic or what is important of financial synergies in M&A in Vietnam. And then we have overlooked some literature reviews, some research relevant to our topic. And we go to the data and methodologies we use for our research. And then we are talking about some findings and discuss some main points relevant to the financial synergy in M&A in Vietnam. And so that is our content today. So firstly, I just tell you a little bit about why we choose this topic or what is important of the subjects. So you know that M&A is a very famous topic in the financial areas. So M&A, that is the transactions involves 1 or 2 companies. They merge together into the one corporations. And why they do that? Because they want to follow the different reason or objectives. So firstly, they're looking for the broad strategies because after M&A, they become bigger, they have more powers than just small one. And so that's why they have more opportunities for promotion, for development, and even for create the more jobs or profit for the companies. And maybe they also follow the objectives of economy of scales or new market. But M&A also leading to some problems. And we, based on some different research, we find out that more than 50% of companies after M&As are unsuccessful. And there are a lot of reasons explain why they fail or why they unsuccessful after M&As. Because before M&A, they over-optimistic assessment of economy of scale or growth strategies, objectives. Or they have not enough investigations of the 2 companies before they merge together. Or even they have some problem with the personnel or the cultures or the problem from the board of directors. That is in theories. In Vietnam, you know that according to the survey of KPMG in 2018, we found that Vietnam is become one of the most attractive M&A destination in Southeast Asia. From the period 2013-2017, we attract from $8.9 billion to more than $14 billion. And when you look at these figures, that is the number we get from the stock plus and being formed, and we summarize in these figures. And look at this one. The line chart show you the numbers of deal of M&A deals, and the bar chart show you the deal values. So we collect data from 2013 until to the first quarter of 2018, and we can see that at the end of 2018 there was only 72 M&A case, but this number increased strongly at the end of 2017. And currently, the total value of M&As increased strongly from these periods. And on average, during 5 years, the values of M&A in Vietnam increased more than 115%. So we can see that this period, that's the witness the booming of the M&A in Vietnam, especially in 2017. We got this result because our economy creates more opportunities for the company to M&A based on the growth of GDP, based on the stable economies and the financial system and the other issues. And we also look at the case study in Vietnam during this time, and we find out some characters. More than 50% of M&A in Vietnam focus on the food and beverage industries. This we calculate based on the average number from 2013 and 2017. And the second one is, you see the M&A focus on real estate, account 24%, and 5% belong to the constructions and materials industries. So according to the KPMG 2018, this will be continue in the next few years. I mean, in the future, most of M&A in Vietnam also keep going focused on the food, real estate, and constructions in Vietnam. And we also see some characters based on the M&A in Vietnam is most of the company or investor, when they do M&A, they're looking for strong growth potentials. This we get from the KPMG survey 2018 when they asked the company involved in the M&As. So more than 50% answers they're looking for the strong growth potential from the M&As, and then management capacities, operating sectors, and the other ones. And during the M&As, the KPMG survey shows some challenge for the M&A. Let's say the challenge from the different cultures or different management in the two or three companies, or the different in compliance, the different in the relying scenarios or the trends or from the customer retentions. So when we look at the overview of M&A in Vietnam, and we see a lot of research, they focus on what the people are looking for M&A before M&A and what happened during the M&As. But after M&As, we didn't find many research focused on that. Just only one research from the State Bank of Vietnam. They focus on after M&A what happened to the commercial bank, but for the enterprise we didn't find anything. So that's why we raise questions. What happened to the company? I mean, the business of the companies after M&As. What about the financial scenarios? Do they exist or not? So that's why we choose this topic to fill the gap, these gaps in the M&A in Vietnam. And to answer these questions, we look at some literature review, literature research. They focus on the financial scenarios in M&As. And to do this one, we divided two main parts. The first one is the scenery in M&A in general, and then the other one we're talking about the financial scenery in M&A. So the scenery in general, that is the concept of two business that we create more profit together than they could separately operate before M&As. So scenery can be received in different form. Maybe that is the benefit from the knowledge of skill, or from the coordinated strategies, or the scenery come from the shared tangible resource, or from economies of scales, or even the scenery come from the gaining power over suppliers, or and creating a new product or services. And that is in general the definition of sceneries. And when we look in more detail about the scenery in M&As, we summarize some source of scenery that come from the M&As. Let's say the scenery come from the operating economies, from the market power, from the financial gains, and the others. And in more detail about the financial sceneries, so we based on the definition of Core 2008. They say financial sceneries are performance advantage gained by controlling financial resource across business or firm. So financial scenery could exist in four types. The first one is reductions of the corporate risk. And the second one is establishment of internal capital market. And then maybe informal tax advantages and financial economy of scale. So that is the type of financial scenarios, and we find out from the other research. So in Vietnam, we want to know if this financial scenario could exist in M&A in Vietnam, and if that happens, exactly how much the company could be earned, or what is the challenge, or what is the weakness right now the company are faced up with. So to do that ones, my partner will continue with the data, methodologies, and our findings.
Hi everyone. We are going to with the data and the methodology. Firstly, to estimate the success of the Vietnamese M&A deals, we investigate the 82 deals announced in the 2003 and 2016 period, which have public financial information of company post-mergers performance. We try to investigate at least one of the deal each year. However, in 2004, we cannot find any deals that have enough information to examine. So the number of deals in 2004 is 0. And we can see in 2008 and 2012, we have the largest number of the deals that can be investigated in the sample. If we have enough the long time to invest to examine the synergy, therefore the period we just ended in 2016, because if we pick the deal is too near from 2008 and 2019, we have not enough information to examine the positive or the negative side of the deal bring to the past to the companies in the deal. In figure 2 is a categorization of the targets and acquired in 2003 and 2016 by the type of the firm. And we categorize in 2 types. The first is a foreign company. The second is listed company, and the state-owned enterprise, and the other. The dataset indicates that most the acquirers are foreigners, whereas a large proportion of acquired companies are local listed firms. This result is similar to previous research of the researcher in Vietnamese before. About the methodology, we categorize the outcome of the deals into 3 types: positive, mixed, and negative. A deal is positive when it has an increase in revenues or profits in the long term, at least 3 or 5 years after the deal, or has the selling price larger than buying price after a holding period, if the buyer resell the stock again, or it has an increase in the market share. A deal is stated in negative when it has negative profits or turnover, or the buyer sells the target immediately after a while hold the equity with lower price compared to the buying price. And we can see that most of the deals are in the positive. And to investigate more detail about the outcome of M&A deal in the sample, we employed the Fisher exact test and calculated the odds ratio with data of contingency table of 2 by 2. The Fisher exact test is suitable to calculate the outcome of the contingency table with small size. This table is describes outcome of 2 groups, positive and mixed, and and negative, because we can see in the table 1, the number of deals in mixed and negative is rather more than the positive, and in some case we also see this circumstance. Then we in most cases we add just mixed and negative in one group, and the other group is positive. We had used physical expected state in the case of limitation sample size, and you know that the hypothesis of physical expected state is the null hypothesis is the treatment do not affect the outcome, or there's no difference between two outcome groups, and if we reject the null hypothesis, then the treatment affects outcomes, or if in that case, we have the statistically significant difference between the two outcomes of the group. And we also calculated the odds ratio to see the difference between the two groups of outcomes. The odds ratio is 95 confidential interval are firstly calculated by Orman 1991. This is the first result we have. In the table 3 is the outcome of M&A deal in from 2003 and 2016 by the type of the transaction. We divide the type of transaction in two types. The first is acquisition and the other is mergers. In mergers, one of the company will diminish of operating, and acquisition, maybe the two companies exist after the deal. With P value after than 10% and the confidential of 91%, I have a little mistake in this slide. We have no evidence to calculate that the merger have higher probability of successful than acquiring. The second result is that we examine the outcome when the deal to examine the different financial outcome of foreign acquirers and domestic acquirer. We have another contingency table as follows. The number of mixed or negative is 26, when the positive is 17 if the acquirer is foreigner, and whereas if the acquirer is domestic, the number of positive is much higher than the mix of negative. We have the proportion of positive is 64%, whereas the number of foreign acquirer is just 40, and we have the p-value is less than 5%, so we have the evidence to conclude that the probability of success is higher in domestic acquirer deals than the deal is half the acquirer is foreign. The 5 is the outcome of the M&A deals in the periods of 2003 and 2016 by the type of the target. In this circumstance, we cannot reject the known hypothesis. That means that we have no evidence to conclude that if the target is foreign or domestic, each of the deals have the larger of the positive than the other. So it can indicate that the result is rather mixed than clearly. The final result is shown in the table 5. The outcome of the deal by the percentage of the equity. There is a significant difference in outcome of M&A deals on the threshold of 35% stake in the target company. The test indicates that if the acquirer took over more than 35%, the probability of positive outcome is higher than the deal with smaller size. This can be explained by when the acquirer cannot by more than 35%. This threshold allows the buyer have more administrative right in the company after the deal. Then they can administrate the company more following their intent than if they had less than 35%. So we have some conclusion here. We investigate the outcome of 20 years M&A deals in 2003 and 2006, and the results suggest that the probability of success is higher if the deal ended with more than 35% equity transferred, and the acquirers a local firm. And there's no evidence to conclude that there is difference in the deal of which the target is domestic or foreigner, or the deal ended with the acquirer the deal is most of the time. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, dear colleagues, for very interesting report. Thank you very much. And now it is time for discussion. So, dear colleague, do you have any question to our presenters?
Em show chị cái màn hình lên.
Okay. Just a minute.
So, nice to meet you. My name is Huang Ga. So I'm a graduating student from Financial University, and I have some few questions about your presentation. So, can you switch to the slide where you mentioned the most promising sectors of MA? You have mentioned that the food and beverage and the construction industry is the most promising, and I have a question that during 2018 and 2019 in Vietnam, as I know that we have a bubble in the real estate market, and how did that affect on the merger and acquisition? And the second question is about you've mentioned that only acquisition project is the most successful, and mergers is not successful as acquisition. So I want to know which sector did you analyze? So in your sample size of 84 companies.
Could you repeat again those second questions? We were very clear about the first question, but not clear the second question.
I mean that you have analyzed 84 companies, yes, and I want to know that which sector these companies are related to, which sector, to food, beverage, or construction? Does it related to the figures that you mentioned in the most promising industries?
Nhưng trong 2013 đến 2017 thì nó là food. Thế nhưng mà trong sample của em 84 công ty thì này có bao nhiêu phần thuộc về food and factors? Okay, in general, as I mentioned before, our M&A in Vietnam focused on food and beverage in 2018 and 2017. And the question is, for the first questions, I think in the futures, because we get this number from the KPMG survey 2018, and we see in the futures, this will be continued. And in our chambers of 84 companies, we have here is we collect data from 2013 to 2016, and we see we have 25 companies belong to food and beverage.
Yes. Okay. So most of our companies are
for real estate, because right now, you know, Vietnam governments, we are right now limit investing in real estate. I mean, we limit about fundings flow into the real estate, because we want to intend, let's say from State Bank of Vietnam, we intend credits pour into the other industries, including the constructions and the retail industries, not focused on the real estate. So that's why I think this maybe is the key factor impacting on the M&A proceedings. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Can I have one more question? Just you've mentioned that a positive factor of M&A deals is an increase of the revenue. But I want to know whether did you calculate like a DCF model using like the terminal value to calculate the net present value of the project, or you just like taking account on the revenue? Because if you mention that the revenue of the company is increased, it doesn't mean that the enterprise value will increase.
Em tính trên cái gì? Cái positive và negative.
Here on the slide, I think data and methodology, you said that the positive factor is when a company has an increase in revenues or profit in the long term. So my question is, did you take account like the NPV of the project or not? Or you just
they collect the financial data that the company published in the media, mainly focused on revenue, profit, or market share of the firm, about in the long term, about at least 3 years. And if we get the year that the revenue is increased, is much more than the year is in downturn period. So we conclude that the M&A deal might have a positively effect on the firm after the deal, on the firm operating after the deal. And on the other side, if the market share is reduced, the firm is sell immediately the stock after they announce that they buy the firm or the equity. We conclude that the deal has negative impact on the firm.
Okay, thank you very much for your clear answer. So I will give a speech to Inolina.
Okay, our another student with next question about your presentation.
Hello, my name is Anga. My question is less methodological. I'd like to ask, what do you think caused the boom in mergers and acquisitions here in Vietnam? What was the main cause of 2017 the bar was much higher than the rest of the years?
I'm sorry, we could hear the question clearly.
What caused the boom of M&A sphere? Because I read before that the government lifted the restriction on foreign ownership of companies, so that might be the cause, but what's your opinion?
In this chart overview M&A, you see the total value of M&A in 2017 increased strongly, around 146 billion US dollars. Because, you know, from 2016, we make an announcement about the new investment for foreign investor. So from that, we attract 1,000 foreign investors into Vietnam. And the figure of FDIs from 2016 to 2017 increased strongly. But let's say in the first slide, I showed that at the end of 2017, we attract 14 billion US dollar from foreign investor, and most of them into M&As. I think the key point about the foreign investment laws news set up in Vietnam.
Based on that, I'd like to also ask on the last slide, conclusion slide, the last sentence says there's no evidence to conclude that there's a difference of which the target is domestic or foreigner. And since foreign direct investment has caused the boom, do you think this conclusion should be more in favor of foreign companies?
Yes, yeah, we can say that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So, dear colleagues, I would like to continue our discussion, and first of all, I would like to ask you, when you mention industry where FDI is invested, you miss such, from my point of view, such a very promising industry like tourism. From my own experience, from not me, but my relatives, and from many of my friends, I heard very impressive, very good impression from the rest in Vietnam. And why you didn't mention this industry, I mean industry of hospitality, in your observation?
You mean about the tourism industry is not popular in M&A case in Vietnam, right?
I mean M&A, yeah. Some FDI exactly in sphere of tourism.
I'm sorry, but I'm not quite understand the point.
I am looking for the slide of your presentation.
Yes. Which slide?
Most promising industry for M&A. It
Yes.
is slide number, I don't know exactly, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 one.
Yeah, okay.
The most promising industries for M&A. But
Yes.
the industry of tourism is absent. Why? You are so promising country for organizing hospitality, especially in autumn and in spring. Why in your presentation, in your research, you miss it?
Yeah, you know, I'm not sure about the reason why tourism is not popular in M&A in Vietnam, but I think because in our countries, in recent years, food, real estate, and construction, I think that's the blossom industries because the benefit from those companies is very, very impressive. That's why, from the investor point of view, when they look at this company, maybe they can see the good futures rather than the other industries. Let's say, from my point of view, healthcare or retail industry is very good, but actually it's not many M&A happen in these industries. Even our government right now, they focus much more on the retail industries and the other, let's say the healthcare or the education. But actually, for the knowledge of investor, maybe it's not enough to persuade them to put money in that one.
Mm-hmm. And can you characterize, nevertheless, the approximate pace in the growth of this industry in your country? Just approximate result.
For the tourism industries?
Yes, for a sphere of hospitality.
Perhaps because I guess
is it
from
rising or
GSO,
dropping at the moment?
Yeah, the growth of tourism industry increased more than 70% last 3 years. It's very impressive. It's very, very, very good. But yeah, that is the question is very good because I'm not concerned. Why the people they're not concerned about that industries? That is a very interesting question.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Maybe we think in the future.
And I see your reason. And my second question: when we discuss your slide overview of M&A in Vietnam, we can see rise during the last 5 years till 2017, but significant drop from even 146 deals to only 40 deals in 18 years. What is the reason of such, I think, very, very significant drop?
Because why? Because in 2018, I just calculated the first quarter of 2018. I have not enough the full number for the whole 2018, so that's why you see the number is down significantly.
18? What do you mean?
From the figure you see is the number and the value of the M&A in Vietnam decreased strongly, right? Because for the 2018, I just calculate the first quarter of 2018. Not the whole
I
year.
see. So it is not complete yet, and you don't have proper information for the whole financial year. Okay, yes. I see. And can you clarify next your slide where you describe just a little bar of historical investment? What do you mean? Next slide, when you pay attention on key characteristic that investors and sellers looking for.
Yes, that is we get the result from the KPMG survey. They asked the investor why, if they looking for M&A, what are the key points they focus on? And the answer is more than 50 participants. They answer they looking for the growth potentials of the company after M&A.
And how deep this historical investment have you taken in account?
Historical investment is mean they're looking for the historical the investment is mean historical investment đây chính là cái việc là cái quá khứ đầu tư của cái công ty này, bao nhà đầu tư đổ vào thứ. Yeah. Yes, historical investment means the investor they're looking the past and they want to know how many investors they were attracted by the company or they invest in the company before M&A, especially the foreign investor.
And how deep this historical period is from your point
They
of view?
calculate based on the number of foreign investors, based on the total investor of the company.
Okay, thank you for explanation. Yes, student, any other question?
Can I ask a question?
Alexander, for sure, yes.
Dear colleagues, my name is Alexander and I have one question. What are the main partners of Vietnam, maybe some strategic investors for Vietnam, some countries or maybe some foreign corporations? Do you know some examples?
In Vietnam right now, Thailand, before 2014, Japan is the main partner, and right now Thailand is the main partners in M&A in Vietnam.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
So, hello, my name is Lam. My question is, what to keep in mind in M&A in Vietnam? What are the disadvantages and advantages, and what are the problems about M&A in Vietnam?
I think from my point of view, the main advantage of most of the companies when they go to M&A in Vietnam about the new market, because they can help the foreign company could be expand their market into in Vietnam. And so that when we look at the food industries, Sadeco was merged with the Thailand companies. And so now they control more than 40% of retail market in Vietnam. That is the key point. It's very important. But the challenge is, I think, that is come from the legal framework and maybe from different, the cultures a little bit and different in the board of director management. But I think that a challenge, the more challenges in Vietnam.
Thank you very much.
Dear Vietnamese colleague, thank you once more for very interesting presentation, really interesting presentation. It's my pleasure to listen to it, but unfortunately we don't have enough time for discussion. And I take the seat to our next presenter. This is presentation International Microfinance Trend. And our presenter, Vysokov Denis, Master Program student of International Economic Relations faculty.
Hello, let me introduce myself. I'm a graduate student of the Financial University. Okay. Let me introduce myself again. My name is Vysokov Denis. I'm a graduate student of the Financial University. I'm working in the Bank of Russia in the Department of Microfinance Market. And today's presentation focuses on the international trends of microfinance market. So, let's start with a bit of history. The first historically microfinance organizations that appeared were pawn shops. Pawn shops are a very stable form of microfinance organization that is essentially requires collateral for every loan. This makes their needs for regulations very small. They do not need to be to have a lot of normative acts in order to act in a stable market. However, the trends with pawn shops around the world are very different. We'll see that later that in some countries, for example, there are no pawn shops at all, they are outlawed. And in other countries like France, pawn shops are mostly state-owned, which adds their national peculiarities. Now, today microfinance, I would split it into two distinct categories.
Slide presentation, please. Could you show the slide? We didn't see the slide on the video. Slide.
Oh, you don't see the slides?
Yes.
You need to press the left button somewhere in the right corner to accept the presentation, accept content. Yeah, you need to press something there.
Could you check again, because we asked the technicians, but we didn't see anything. Phải. Có kích từ chỗ nào không em? Để cho nó hiện lên không? Yeah. So,
yeah, we are restarting right now.
Yes. Đây, slide của nó đây.
Now, do you see it?
Can you see it?
Can you see the presentation?
Okay, don't worry. So we didn't see, but we have the slide in our computer. So we look at our computer.
Oh, okay. So you see the slides. Yeah, I'll just say when I move to the next one, okay? So, well, we are currently in slide number 3. Okay, we are now in slide number 3, microfinance today. Okay, so let's start again this slide. I would divide the microfinance industry today into two distinct categories. The first one is what I would call the classical microfinance that was developed in poor countries, and its main focus on to fight poverty through microloans. This industry is mainly run through government support and is not aimed at making profit. The other half of the microfinance industry is commercial microfinance, which what you would expect in most Western countries nowadays. We'll return to the difference between those models a bit later. Now, on the next slide, yes, slide number 4. Let's see. The microfinance in Europe is of this second type, commercial microfinance. But the main difference from other types of commercial microfinance is that it aimed at recreational loans, those loans that recreate themselves through creating more industry. Those are loans to small and medium businesses, and those loans are given through cooperative banks. You can argue that a cooperative and a cooperative bank doesn't have many differences, and it's pretty much the same. It has its members that both are borrowers and investors in the bank. However, the bank has a very distinct advantage over other microfinance institutions. They can have the right to open accounts. Why account is important? Because when you give money to unknown business, you can't guarantee that the business will return this money. Maybe they're scheming you and trying to launder that money away, and then just disappear. So, but when you have an account for this business, you know exactly where the money is going. That's why it makes the repayment rates much higher, and of course it positively affects also the financial the main financial benchmark for those banks, and helps to create new businesses, new jobs, and generally affect the economy in positive way. Now, on the next slide, let's now talk about another side of microfinance in India. The general way that it works is that microfinance is widespread in rural regions where banks are not present. Since the main population is in India is still having difficulties, financial difficulties, and difficulties with access to bank, microfinance organizations are very widespread. The main loans that they give, those are agricultural loans and payday loans. The regulation of the microfinance market in India has actively been changed since 2010. It now has minimum capital requirements, reserves requirements, and other standardized forms of microloans agreements. This helps to prevent such cases when, for example, unethical methods of collecting have led many microfinance borrowers in India, unfortunately, to practically commit suicide because they had no way of returning the money, and an illegal organization, which are practically loan sharks, were trying to use every method they could to get the money back. Nowadays, on the next slide, we can see that microfinance organizations that were previously non-bank financial companies are now turning into bank companies. Why it is good for the industry is because the banks generally have tighter regulations, which makes the market more stable, and they also can't go on and employ illegal collection methods because they are subject to restrictions and different laws that regulate the amount of times that collectors, for example, can call the person who is has overdue payments. And on other microfinancial institutions, there are currently mutual funds that are implemented in India, and they are pretty much provide savings opportunities for those unbanked people that do not have any connections with banks, especially again in rural areas. So on the next slide, we can see that the regulation in India changes in positive ways. They release specific indices that show how the microfinance sector has performed in the past year. This in turn helps companies that want to invest in microfinance to understand better the market and know the risks involved. The other changes that also made in order to protect the customer are credit bureaus that microfinance organizations have to transmit information on any loan that their client takes. This in turn prevents a situation when a client takes too much loans because when he has reached some threshold, no other credit organization will give him more credit, more loans. And another very important aspect of microfinance in general is work with appeals. Microfinance usually is not a topic that politicians like to speak about, because it generates more social tensions than it actually gives an economic effect. So when there is a central agency that is working with appeals and with complaints on microfinance organization, it greatly helps to reduce those negative tendencies. Next slide. Another example of microfinance in its more traditional sense is Bangladesh. Muhammad Yunus is actually credited as the first person who created a microfinance organization, the Grameen Bank. Well, now let's go a bit more into detail of how this example differs from microfinance in Europe and other developed countries. In the start of his project, Muhammad Yunus wanted to create a bank for the poor, and that's still how Grameen Bank is called, Bank for the Poor. It was a bank for rural areas where not only banking industry, pretty much nothing was developed, and it was given loans on a community basis. Here there's the key points that are very important to understand how it works. In order to take this loan, you need to have at least 5 co-signers that will guarantee that you will return this loan in time. So in a village communities, those usually the people living next door. And of course, if you fail to return the loan, you are subject to social pressure. That's how they got a very high return rates. Other important factor is that loans are provided for starting new businesses. They are not provided for consumption. So people start new businesses, they have enough time, the loans are usually provided for 1 year, and they have enough time to generate new money from their business and return the loan back. This is this practice is based on the assumption that new businesses create new workplaces and in general help develop the community. And the borrowers are mostly women, because the philosophy of the bank is that women has the least access to financial resources and the least opportunities for education and creating new businesses. When they help women, they to actually overcome those difficulties, they greatly help the community in general. So another important factor is the funding. On the next slide, you can see that the Grameen Bank is funded through savings. In the start of its activities, the bank was founded through charity and government help. This is of course unsustainable, but the right business model helped to shape it now into a bank that acts like most other commercial banks. It takes deposits and gives loans. And this model, even despite the low interest rates, actually profitable for the bank, which means that this bank is self-sustained. Okay. On the next slide, you can see the regulation of microfinance in Bangladesh. They have a special organization that is pretty much a branch of the Bank of Bangladesh that regulates microfinance organizations. They need to adhere to certain maximum interest rates and have pretty strict regulation regarding reserves. They have to create reserves on even not overdue payments, not overdue loans. And how regulation works? When we have a minimum requirement for capital, each reserve that you form detracts from the capital. When you go below the threshold, you're out of business because the license is revoked. So they need to keep their risk policy in check in order not to actually just pass the law and anger their regulatory authorities. They also have liquidity margin of 50% of the deposit liabilities. This is meant as a guarantee fund in case the guarantee fund in case the organization runs out of business, so they would have more ability to repay back the deposits. Now, let's shift back into the Western world, into Canada. Next slide. In Canada, the main form of loans are microloan, PDL loans. Payday loans are loans that are given for a duration of usually 30 to 60 days until the next payment. They are meant for people who got into some unexpected trouble in their life, need some usually small amount of money, and will be able to repay it with their next wage payment. This, however, has many disadvantages, since this category of people are those who can't take a bank loan, probably because their credit score is too low, because they don't have access to a bank, but usually because the bank just do not want to lend them money, because the bank believes they won't be able to pay it back. The microfinance organizations, let's switch to the next slide, help to circumvent those troubles, but at the cost of higher interest rates. So in fact, this commercial model works in this way. We have people that are already facing some troubles in their world. They are taking a loan, and this loan will have higher interest rates, and are now, aside from their problem, need to repay the loan. If it is a one-time matter, they usually can repay the loan and leave this organization. But some will take new loans to cover previous ones. In fact, turning this into a vicious cycle with no escape from poverty. That's where the stability of the market itself is being challenged, because with such clients, it essentially turns into a stage when one day they can't repay all the loans that they take in, and the organizations are suffering losses due to this. So let's move now to the next slide. Pawn shops. Oh, I'm sorry. Pawn shops in China. Pawn shops in China are very popular source of microfinance in China. They have different tiers of licenses that are based on the amount of assets that the pawn shop has. In order to be allowed to accept deposits, they need to have a large client base of loans. This is to ensure that when they do accept deposits, they have a smooth running business. They all, well, according to every other financial regulation in China, the regulations are pretty strict. They do not allow a lot of opportunities to make profit, and they demand strict adherence to laws. But at present, the pawn shops are providing are very popular among Chinese businessmen, because they provide a cheaper alternative to bank loans. In order to go to a bank, you need to fill a lot of documents. You need to adhere to the contracts. You need to wait until the decision is made. When you go to pawn shop and you have something to sell, you get the money almost immediately. That's why it makes it much more popular. But of course, you need to have something as a collateral. Usually, anyway, banks also ask for a collateral. So if you have the choice, it's better to go to a pawn shop. So in New Zealand, next slide. In New Zealand, is the main interesting point is that there's only one law that that regulate the microfinance industry. They do not have a lot of strict regulation, but as we can see, there's a lot of licensed individuals, and the market is pretty healthy because the interest rates are not very high. They're of course higher than bank rates, but they allow for people that get in the same life troubles that I described before to take money. So that's pretty much the main takeaway from New Zealand, that regulation doesn't have to be very complex in order to work. Another interesting country, that we can see on the next slide, is France. In France, pawn shops are mainly state-owned. They have also municipal credit offices where they can give cash for people that are currently facing trouble. This is an alternative to payday loans because they are regulated well, they are owned by the government and have lower interest rates, and their main target of operation, their main goal is to help people, not to earn money on them. This is an interesting approach to microfinance, and it's pretty unique in this sense, but despite there is not enough data on this, I do not think that it's very profitable for the government budget. Then again, they have quite high requirements for those loans, so they do not just give them to anyone. You need to go through a procedure similar to a bank in order to get such loans. Well, on the next slide, we can see microfinance in Russia. That's pretty much my sphere of work and expertise. And in Russia, microfinance is divided between two categories of microfinance organizations. One that do not have capital requirements can only give loans. The other one, which has high capital requirements, can accept deposits. The microfinance model in Russia is a payday loan model. As I said before, it doesn't really help people, and it creates a market that is not very self-sustainable. It's based on the assumption that when you give money to almost everyone, of course, half of your clients won't repay it back, but high predatory interest rates go up as 800% per year of interest rates will in fact give you more than you lost through the remaining half of the clients that will actually repay their loans. This creates both social tension and a market where, as you can see, the number of microfinance organizations is dropping sharply over the few last years. An important trend that we are trying to break is the reliance of microfinance organization on payday loans. Because, as I said before, loans that are aimed at creating more new small and medium businesses are much better for the market. There's also, why I always talk about sustainability and the importance of stable market. It may sound not important because, well, let them go bankrupt. If they can't run their businesses right, it's their problem. But when we take into the equation individual investors that deposit money in those organizations, we understand that we must keep their money safe, and that's why regulation is needed. If we will outlaw, for example, it's also a decision that always talked about, to outlaw deposits into microfinance organizations because of their risk. Microfinance organizations will have very big trouble with funding. Banks usually do not like to give loans to microfinance organizations, so they will have to find new sources of funding. If, for example, to prevent social tension altogether, we will close all microfinance. There will still be people who are in sharp need of money and will go anywhere to shark loans to get this money. And those people, since they won't be regulated in any way, would become victims of predatory lending. So it's microfinance is a big problem with many edges. You can't just solve it by outlawing something. You need regulations that will allow for both the development of market and the satisfaction of customers. So let's check other countries. On the next slide, you can see microfinance in Kazakhstan. Microfinance in Kazakhstan has been not very developed until the last few years, and it's pretty much similar to the payday loans of Russia, but it also focuses on rural loans in undeveloped regions. As we can see, since the regulations were officially introduced for microfinance organizations, the number of non-payment loans has dropped sharply to about 5%. It's a very good indication participation. In Russia, this number is about 40–50%. So it shows that the risk-taking policy of microfinance organization in Kazakhstan is actually better. But since the market is growing fast, I believe this indicator will be much higher in the next 2 years, as the growth of the portfolio and the growth of the credit institutions will actually loosen their risk-taking policies. Okay, on the next slide you can see that the main trends in microfinance in Kazakhstan is that they have a very high share of online technologies, which was surprising to me when I conducted this research. They have actually a higher share of online microfinance organizations than in United States. But they still face a lot of problems, among which are legal barriers and not enough knowledge of methodology or accounting. Well, and on the next slide, the last slide, microfinance in Belarus. The microfinance is a very young industry there, and its total assets are about 23 million rubles, which is one big loan of a bank, of a commercial bank. So it's pretty much non-existent. But it is a development market, and in the future it will also, I believe, become an asset of the financial market of Belarus in general. So, in order to summarize, I thank you for listening for the presentation, and now I will gladly answer any questions you have.
Okay, thank you, Denis, for very interesting presentation. Now I consider it like some age between legal and economical sciences, but nevertheless, both presentations we have already listened today are very impressive, and I really enjoy our seminar today. Dear colleagues, do you have any question to our reporter?
Yes, I have one question.
Please, Alexander.
Dear colleague, as I said, my name is Alexander, and I have a question about microfinance organization. Is there a difference between amount of microfinance organization in developed countries and developing countries? What is the trend in amount of them? For example, in the United States, in UK, in Europe, and can you, say please something?
Yes, I understand the question. The trend is that in developed countries, microfinance organizations are usually merged, which relates to the previous presentations of mergers and acquisitions, especially in the last years. In Germany, for example, if I remember correctly, the amount of cooperative banks dropped by half in the last 5 years, because bigger organizations have more chance to sustain crisis efforts. And there are also constant gradual changing of the regulations into more strict ones. Regulations are not something that is set in stone. It constantly changes. So with each year they strive to make their microfinancial sectors more stable and raise capital requirements. In order to adhere to the raise of capital requirements, organizations do not have any other choices but to join together. In developing countries, the strength is not as strong, so it allows for more dispersed number of microfinance organizations.
Thank you.
Okay.
I have questions.
Dear Vietnamese colleague, it's turn to you.
Yes. Yeah, thank you for the presentation. It's very well, because we can see the pictures of microfinance from different countries. So my question is, you mentioned here is some different countries from Europeans, Indian, Canada, New Zealand, France, Russia, and the other countries. So I get some point. Let's say when we're talking about the microfinance in India, and that is our standing point. We mentioned about the money lenders, or in China that is a popular pawn shop, and in front that is the social institutions. So what about in Russia's? What type of the microfinance in Russia's? And the second question is, in slide number 16, about microfinance in Russia's, you show the fingers. I get here is the number of microfinance in Russia's, and we see the downtrend from 2017 to 2018. So what happened in this period?
Well, so yes, thank you for your question. What happened in this period is that we also strict. So what happened in this period is that we also stricken our regulations in terms of capital requirements and in terms of maximum interest rates. Since those regulations came into effect, we in fact had to cut down on organizations that didn't have the ability to pull enough capital. Also, there is a large amount of organizations, unfortunately, who are pretty much Ponzi schemes. They take money from investors and use every method that they can in order to siphon those funds away. We have been cutting very hard on those organizations. Even this year we continue this trend. We have developed a number of new instruments to catch those organizations that are involved in money laundering and in Ponzi schemes. So the other half of the organizations that have went out of business, so to say, was related to their criminal tendencies. So I hope you answered your question.
Yeah. Just one small question about when you talk about the microfinance in Kazakhstan. You see the key successful of this country because they apply the fintech in the microfinance areas, right? So in our country, we also want to improve the microfinance right now. So do you think the fintech that is a key point to help the country to improve the microfinance? Do you think so?
Yes, I believe that in order to improve microfinance in such countries as Kazakhstan or Vietnam, for example, you need to focus more on the traditional microfinance in order to create new small and medium businesses. But the downside to this is that at the starting, at least, at the start of those processes, you need government support. And in this I mean government funding. And governments are usually reluctant to spend money on something that they are not sure will get anything in return. Grameen Bank, for example, also had a very very hard start. They first started in one village. When they could confirm that it works, they received more funding to a district. When it worked in district, they spread to a city. So it was also not in one day. It developed over the years, and for each additional stage, they need to confirm to the Bank of Bangladesh that they could actually make their model sustainable. I believe that this approach is very good because it creates a stable institution at the start. In Russia, for example, it was a bit chaotic in the sense that a lot of microfinance organizations appeared, and after that, regulations started to appear. And that's why they also started dropping, because when the regulations appeared and became more refined, more strict, we actually had more understanding, more experience with microfinance organizations. They started to drop out of business. If you build this industry from the base, from the start, on a sustainable basis, it would be much better in the future and will lead to much better results.
Thank you.
No, any more questions?
Okay. Denise, thank you very much for interesting presentation. Unfortunately, I am forced to interrupt our question, but maybe our students have one more question. Okay.
Okay, my name is Ben, and I'm very my name is Bo, and I'm very enjoy from this presentation, and I have one question from our presentationer as you remember that the microfinance organization in Russia last year decreased about approximately 12%. And could you give me the explanation why it drops, and should the government make any policies to support this in this area? I mean, could you give me the explanation why the number dropped, and should government make any policies to support this industry?
Well, yes, in terms of support of this industry, the government uses loans to microfinance organizations that are specifically aimed at small and medium business. Unfortunately, those loans right now have really low repayment rates, mainly because the credit scores and the credit models in those organizations are not very good, and the risk-taking policies are also not very good. So that's one point of government support for microfinance organization. And the other point is that currently there is a number of self-regulating organizations. Each microfinance organization in Russia has to be a member of one of those organizations. They provide additional layer of both support for those organizations and as a soft regulation to check that they're adherent to the rules. They are mostly meant to be as of intermediary between the Bank of Russia and microfinance organizations. They help them with software, with general consulting about the microfinance market, and in other areas they constantly hold seminars to expand the qualification of microfinance employees, and etc. Right now, however, the second part of the job of the self-regulating organizations as to actually check if their members are adherent to regulation is not working very well, because, well, those organizations pay to them. They have to pay them as members every month. And of course, you would not look very strictly on someone who pays to you. So that's still working pretty much one-sided, and we are tuning, in the process of tuning this. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Denise, once more. Dear participant, unfortunately, we don't have time to listen to our third reporter, but nevertheless, I decide that we continue discussion on the subject, and I hope that all our discussion was fruitful enough and mutually interesting for you. And of course, I am very glad to moderate such interesting conversation, such interesting exchange of opinion, of scientific opinion. Thank you very much to our Vietnamese colleagues. Xin Camon, dear friends, and I decide, and I hope you support me in my decision, that we continue this topic discussion, because it is very interesting, and we didn't observe even the half of it. So be ready to continue discussion on the subject. And now, for a moment, I can tell you thank you once more for your participation, and goodbye till next meeting then. Tam biet.
Yeah. Thank you and see you.
Thank you.
Thank you.